Well, coming to you live from Johannesburg, this is Tonight with Jane Dutton. I am, of course, Faith Mangope. Well, tonight we look at the following. Robert Mcbride's battle to stay at the helm of the Independent Police Investigative Directorate is not quite over. He's lodged an urgent interdict to stay on. That's after ANC members of the Police Portfolio Committee teamed up with Police Minister Cele to get him removed. Why is this position so crucial? That and more in just a moment. And then we've got government which plans to slash its bloated wage bill, saving 30 billion rand and losing 30,000 people. We look at the implications of such a decision. The President of America's a mobster and he paid hush money for his mistress's lies. Or could Michael Cohen's testimony pose a threat to Donald Trump? And tomorrow is D-Day for new data regulations. We tell you what you need to know about the new rules on data expiry. While emotions ran high outside the Polokwane Magistrates Court this morning, that's where 5 teenagers accused of killing Thoriso Temane appeared. Temane was attacked on his way home from a church band practice. Proceedings have now been postponed for a week after a 6th suspect was arrested, but crowds gathered outside calling for justice.
When I go the same become for 2 weeks, but can't offer in seeking. From there, they were banding him, Bamokile and Artonuts. Even now, I can be suspected. Sinki, court. I can be suspected about
The problem is that the parents are spoiling their kids, and we, as the community of Polokwane, we are not condoning that, and we are not going to promote that. So justice must be served to Thoriso Temane. Connection or no connection, bribe or no bribe, captain or brigadier's son or not, justice must be served. Thank you.
The MEC for Community Safety says a task team has been set up to address safety concerns in the area following the brutal attack.
And we're going to work with the communities to make sure that we deal with this. But please make sure that you participate, give us information as and when you have it, even on this specific case. If you've got information that you think can continue to help the police, please come forward and give that information to the police for us to make sure that we leave no stone unturned, so that this matter must be rooted to the core.
Well, Fikile Mbalula shouldn't pretend he had no pre-existing relationship with the Guptas. Now, that's according to former Finance Minister Trevor Manuels while testifying at the state capture inquiry. Mbalula allegedly told an ANC NEC meeting the Guptas informed him of his appointment as sports minister rather than then-President Jacob Zuma. Samkelo Maseko has got the story.
This was the first, to the best of my knowledge, the first confirmation which was in the form of I'm saying a very emotional statement by then Minister Mbalula about how he'd been appointed.
Trevor Manuels accusing Jacob Zuma of handing over his presidential rights to the Gupta family.
Fikile Mbalula, who sort of started, who triggered the entire discussion.
The former ANC NEC member says Fikile Mbalula gave an emotional testimony at an ANC NEC meeting in August 2011 about the Guptas. But Manuel's hinting Mbalula and the influential family knew each other better than they've been letting on.
If you didn't have any relationship, my question would be, why did you go? What was said to you as part of the invitation to go to wherever that exchange took place? And I think that it's fair to presume a pre-existing relationship.
Former Communications Minister Sphiwe Nyandas told the Commission he was astounded when Zuma and the NEC didn't react to Mbalula's confession.
All the officials were in that meeting, made any comment about that. But of course, perhaps the owners would have been on the person at whom these allegations were being made, because the person who bore responsibility for appointments to cabinet is the president.
Yes.
In a letter, Mbalula says he wasn't able to meet the 22nd of February deadline to respond to Manuel and is asking for an extension. Samkele Masego, Johannesburg.
While Public Protector Busisiwe Mcbride has named and shamed state institutions which are ignoring her suggested remedial actions, among them the Ministry of Police. Now, a 2018 report by Mcbride revealed that the Police Minister Bheki Cele and the SAPS failed to provide protection for those who blew the whistle on corruption and political killings in KwaZulu-Natal.
It's whistleblowers who have identified corruption in Mzimkhulu. I think it relates to the late Sindiswa Makaka. They were friends and they know that there is this maladministration, corruption which has been happening, and they brought that to our attention. What we were requesting from Minister of Police is to protect those whistleblowers, because they were reporting almost daily that they are being followed. There's a car which is following them, or their lives are in danger. They are being contacted. During the investigation, the minister was contacted, the office was, where we were saying, and even the Section 79 notice was issued, but then again, nothing has been done. The report has been issued, nothing has been done.
Well, traffic into the Johannesburg CBD and other areas has been severely affected by bridge repairs on the M2 highway and will reopen only in 8 months' time. ENCA's Kailihle Khumalo went to have a look.
It's just been a day of pandemonium in Johannesburg as the motorists really are trying to familiarize themselves with the closure of this particular highway. So joining us now is one of the affected people. He's a taxi driver. So, sir, thank you so much indeed for joining us. How are you feeling about this whole thing?
No, by the way, it's too bad. There's a long traffic. We have to travel from town. No, I mean, it's bad.
As you can see, there are some cars that are still trying to make their way. Motorists are spending about 2 hours, 3 hours, so it's an incredibly hectic time. So, back to you in studio.
Well, Ipid head Robert Mcbride's days as Ipid chief are over. His contract officially expired today, and ANC MP sided with the police minister who didn't want his contract renewed.
All of the members that were in this committee have accepted that recommendation. And the reasons became evident as we were going through all the discussion on the last, from Monday until yesterday. It became evident when you look at the relationship. The relationship between the Ipid head and, of course, the minister is broken down. There's no relationship, there's no trust, there's no working together, there's no... That goes against the service delivery that need to be performed by the Ipid.
But could there be a reason for the getting rid of the man who polices the police? So joining me in studio to unpack this is Helen Suzman's Foundation legal counsellor, Anton van Dalsen. And from our Cape Town studio, we're joined by the DA's Damin Barnard. Thank you so much for joining us on Newsnight, well, not on Newsnight, but on Tonight with Jane Dutton this evening. But when we're looking at it, Anton, I want to start off with you. We're speaking about the man who polices the police. One article I particularly read was interesting that said, is it because he's unfit, or is it because actually he's really getting somewhere when it comes to some of the cases, and one of someone is around the case of the former police commissioner, Khomotso Phahlane, that perhaps then there's a political agenda to wanting to get rid of the Robert Mcbride. What do you say to that?
Well, it's possible, but that's not the basis of our involvement here. Our involvement is purely on a legal basis. And our position is, and that is why we have appealed against the High Court decision of 2 weeks ago, where an agreement between the parties was made in order of court whereby Ipid, the Minister of Police and the Portfolio Committee agreed to go through a process on the renewal. Now, when you look at it from a legal perspective, political office holders, political actors are not allowed to be part of a decision-making process. And to give you an example, which will make the principle clearer, it avoids the situation where, let's say, a minister of a ministry of a particular department goes to somebody who has to have an independent role, like the head of Ipid, and says to him, well, your renewal is coming up now. I will make sure that's all in order, but you must please not investigate Mr. X, Y, and Z. It's to avoid that kind of thing. And the Constitutional Court has come out very strongly in a number of cases over the last few years where they have said that it's unconstitutional for the renewal of somebody's position where he has to have an independent position. It's unlawful for somebody who is a political actor to play a role in that decision.
Yeah, but then on the other side of it, Anton, we've got the Police Portfolios Committee, which has sided actually in this time with the minister, right? And as the agreement that came about, that in fact was supposed to be handed to the Portfolio Committee to make such a decision, for them to actually side with the minister, does that not then say that actually maybe due diligence was followed? Or is it because the instigation came before the Portfolio Committee?
No, I think the Portfolio Committee itself is a political actor. It has a majority of ANC MPs, and the assumption could be made that they are following party instructions, or the minister, who is also a member of the ANC. So you have two political actors playing a very important role in this decision. And that is what we have against it. It's the political involvement in a decision of this nature. And from our perspective, we are not supporting or not supporting Robert Mcbride. That's a secondary issue. For us, the legal principles that have been applied in this process are clearly unconstitutional.
So I'm going to come back to you and ask you about what legal principles were supposed to be applied in this case, because the Portfolio Committee has actually sided with the minister, one would assume that the due diligence was actually sided with. But Dan, I want to bring you into this conversation now. I mean, you walked out saying that, listen, this is particularly null and void, but from your perspective, let's bring in the politics in this, because at one stage, yes, there's the legalities of it, but then on the other side of it, it could be, and I remember you actually said in a statement that maybe there's a different agenda at play here, and maybe he's actually making leeway with regards to some of those investigations that he has been following up on, and maybe people just want him out so that those investigations maybe don't even get the light of day.
Indeed. On Friday, it became absolutely apparent that the decision had already been made. They would not allow any oral representation by Mr. McBride. They overruled any attempt to introduce a balance into the hearings. And so we went on. They kept on raising allegations made by an ex-Ipid member who had left under something of a cloud, and every one of his allegations had already been investigated by the Public Service Commission and had been proven to be absolutely unfounded. But they kept on referring to them and kept on raising them. And I know the one member said, oh, there's no smoke without fire, as though if they repeated them often enough, it would tarnish his name. And those self-same allegations have now been dusted off and sent to the Public Protector. And the ANC claimed there's this massive investigation by the Public Protector. Again, utter rot. So it could well be the investigations. 5 billion rand stopped being leaked out via the laboratories, generals arrested. There were another 3 generals and a brigadier for another 87 million. But I think the big one was the 106 million rand investigation through crime intelligence, where he found that 45 million was going to be fed through to the elective Congress of the ANC in 2017. And I think once you stop monies being fed through to that particular party, you've pretty much dug your own hole for your own grave. There's no way that his career was going to survive that.
Okay, and then the other side of it, and I must ask you, you're speaking about the legalities, the way in which it was supposed to be done. Then, Anton, how was it supposed to be done?
Well, I think as a principle, in accordance with what the Constitutional Court has already said, is that political actors cannot be part of the decision-making. So the Minister and the Portfolio Committee should never have, neither of them should ever have been involved in this process. So when it comes to renewals, the Act says that the head of Ipid is in his post for 5 years, which is renewable for a further 5. It doesn't say who takes that decision. So on the basis...
It doesn't say who takes that decision.
No.
So if the portfolio committee, and forgive me if I may,
Sure.
if the portfolio committee takes that decision, because I'm going to ask you on 2 points here. Number one, it says after his 5th term, so after the 5-year term, it may be subject to renewal. That's depending on whether or not he's actually fit to do the job and extend his contract, correct?
Yes.
And then on the second part of it, it does not say who. So if the portfolio committee, the police portfolio committee makes a decision, puts their hands up and goes, guys, you know what, we're taking the decision that we're going to extend or we're going to cancel this contract. Surely if it doesn't specify who, then they're within their legal framework.
No. The Constitutional Court has said in so many words, in a number of cases, that political actors cannot be part of a decision-making process when it comes to renewals of the posts of persons who have to be independent. It's as clear as that.
Yeah. But then who becomes part of that? And who raises their hands and puts their hand up and says, you know what, this guy deserves another term?
If you read the Act, and also in terms of the Constitutional Court judgments, the renewal would happen as a matter of course unless the head of Ipid doesn't want to have it renewed. And he can say, I'm sorry guys, after 5 years I'm out of here. But it would be renewed as a matter of course until the end of the... Well, as a matter of course, automatically, because a political actor is not, it is unlawful for a political actor to play a role in this process.
Okay. But again, and this is a good conversation that we're having, because I'm sure that viewers at home are trying to understand who regulates the regulator. Who puts accountability on the individual who is supposed to hold police accountable? So, in that sense, let's say that Robert Mcbride, for matter of speaking, he did not fulfill certain aspects of his job description, right? Let's say, for argument's sake, that he actually did not perform adequately. Then who gets to sit down and say, you know what, according to this performance appraisal that we're actually having about your job, this means that you failed at fulfilling your mandate. And because you failed at fulfilling your mandate, you cannot have your contract renewed. So then who gets the account, who holds the account on that one?
Let me add there that there are clear provisions in the Act in the case of misconduct or incompetence for the portfolio committee to start a process in order to dismiss the head of Ipid.
The portfolio committee?
The portfolio committee, and that then has to be confirmed by a 2/3 vote in Parliament. So there is a process to get rid of somebody who is guilty of misconduct, incompetence, but that is separate from a renewal. It's not a renewal process.
But do you see from this understanding and from this side of the table, it's the very same people that you're saying should never actually have presided over even, determining whether or not this guy's term of contract gets extended or not. The political heads, as you're speaking, goes back to the political heads, the very same portfolio committee, who are going to now decide whether or not there was misconduct.
But misconduct is very different from a renewal process. A renewal process, one assumes there is no misconduct, otherwise steps would have been taken.
But in this case, they don't want him there anymore.
But then I get back to the point, the Constitutional Court has come out very clearly in a number of cases, and most recently in August of last year, where Sean Abrams' appointment as head of the NPA was found to be unlawful. They deleted from, in that judgment, they also deleted the renewal process that applies to the head of the NPA for this very reason. So it's set, as far as I'm concerned, it's settled law, but that applies then to the renewal process. But if, for any reason, the head of Ipid or the head of any one of these institutions has been guilty of serious misconduct, then there is a process for his removal. But we're not talking of that process. We're talking of a renewal process.
And I hear you. But on the other side of it, Dan, I want to bring you into this conversation now. In terms of the performance appraisal, because it's one thing, I understand that he was a part of revealing issues around the former police commissioner, Homoso Patlane. I remember now there's another one also where it was about tracking cell phones, actually. I think it was worth around 10 million rand, actually, and then there was an inflated price of 50 million rand, etc. But would you give Robert Mcbride a clean bill of health where fulfilling his mandate as Ipid head is concerned?
I think what we saw was an an improvement over the years. Bear in mind, he worked under 4 different police ministers and was removed for a year of his 5-year term illegally, was eventually reinstated along with his whole top structure. But the then minister had put in to oversee a civilian body, a member of crime intelligence, who proceeded to go through everything, pick, choose, cherry pick, what evidence to get rid of, what cases to remove. And he did massive transfers of people with expertise into areas where they had none. And it cost them a fortune to recreate the Ipid after that. Of course, that particular person was paid a huge financial bonus and is now, I believe, the head of the Ekurhuleni Metro Police. So these things are being run internally with the hopes that no one out here will notice. Well, actually, I notice and other people notice, and it is appalling what's happened. The ANC put this man in, thinking here's a loyal cadre who was on death row for us, and he will do as we say. And he pulled up his socks and started doing the job properly. And that was a huge shock. And we see that Becky Cele arrogance from when he was the National Police Commissioner before he was fired has come back. And he simply wrote and said, I'm not taking you back. It was not his decision to take at any stage. He then wrote to the Speaker and said the same thing. So we have this bizarre situation of a minister who does not oversee the Ipid, determining that a man should leave.
Yeah. Diane, I'm going to bring you into this because you mentioned something very critical. You said the ANC is the one that put this man in this place, right? This comrade in this place, thinking that perhaps he would fulfill the mandate as by the ANC, right? So the ANC is the one that put him there. Should it not be the very same, and I'm not even referring to the ANC, I'm just referring to the portfolio committee, the police portfolio committee currently, which is siding with the minister in this instance. The very same police portfolio committee saying, you know what? We don't want you there. You're disagreeing with that. But the very same comrades that put him there, the very same comrades that are taking him out there, and are you saying that those comrades are not acting in the best interests of, number one, the public, right? Number two, the accountability of police in this country. And number three, really, around transparency within Ipid in itself.
That's absolutely what I'm saying. If you look on the internet, it's for public record, the ANC Scopa Working Group 6 months ago complimented the Ipid for the work it was doing. And here we are 6 months down the line, and they have literally, I mean, they were standing up saying he's a liar, making accusations that were unfounded, have never gone to any court. The things they said about Mr. McBride were quite extraordinary. And their aim and their only instruction by their political masters was get rid of this man. And they believe they have done that. The courts, of course, may well decide otherwise.
I'm going to bring you into this, Antonio, as we bring this conversation to a close. So we are not able to determine who, right? So it's the who now comes into the play of taking this individual, taking the decision to actually have McBride's renewal removed or not renew or renew the contract, right? Because it's not stipulated. But as Diane has mentioned, the comrades, the ANC, are the ones that put McBride there. So in your suggestion, what would be the right way to move forward? Should we be extending this man's contract? Should we not be extending this man's contract? Or should we be, what should we be doing from here on? And what should McBride be doing from here on to get perhaps his day in court?
I think from a legal perspective, and this is quite separate from Robert Mcbride, from a legal perspective it's very clear, and that is that his term is extended for a further 5 years as a matter of course, unless for any reason he doesn't want to do it. But the political actors are not permitted to play a role in that decision.
Anto, thank you so much for joining us this evening there. And, of course, we've got Damin Barnard, who is joining us from our Cape Town studios. Now, job creation is a top priority for this government, and yet over the next 3 years, thousands of people will be losing their government jobs. We look at those implications next up. Do stay tuned.